Joining us now to discuss that report and so much more, we're joined today by Mariam Wahba. She's a research analyst at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and Ilan Levy. He's a former Israel national spokesman and Middle East expert. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Morning.
The AP reported that a small number of Iranians were actually able to get through and make calls abroad on cell phones today for the first time since communications were halted. With the country now at over 108 hours without internet access, according to internet monitoring groups, NetBlocks. Based on the little video we're seeing trickling out of the country, what can we expect to hear? Let's start with you, Mariam.
Great to be with you guys this morning. Look, we're entering now 120 hours, a multi-day media digital blackout imposed by the Islamic regime on the Iranian people as they rise up to demand regime change. This is no longer a movement that is demanding reform, but demanding immediate and overall overhaul of the Islamic regime after 47 years of tyranny. In the coming days and hours, what we are looking forward to in Washington is seeing President Trump decide on exactly how he wants to engage with this situation. He has drawn a red line and said that if the regime targets civilians, that he will have to act, and we've seen that already take place. Some numbers are as high as in the thousands of casualties on the ground in Tehran and the surrounding cities.
We've also seen President Trump turning up the heat, economically speaking, where it already hurts for Iran. He posted this on Truth Social, quote, effective immediately, any country doing business with the Islamic Republic of Iran will pay a tariff of 25% on any and all business being done with the United States of America. So here's the political and economic rub here. This 25% penalty could hit Iran's biggest trading partners, including China, the UAE, and Turkey, potentially reopening a new front in the U.S.-China trade fight. So, Ilan, we know China is already under heavy U.S. tariff pressure, but now Beijing is vowing to firmly safeguard and, quote, its legitimate and lawful interests, warning there are no winners in a tariff war. So how does China play a part with respect to Iran and what we're seeing in terms of some of this economic pressure on the nation?
The Iranian regime is now running scared, and the people are looking up to the United States to have their back as they fight for freedom. President Trump is absolutely right to try to choke off the Iranian regime, and that involves cutting it off from the countries that have acted as a lifeline for the regime. One of the options he should be considering now, potentially seizing the oil tankers, taking some of the 2 million barrels every single day to China, allowing it to evade sanctions and pump money into its mechanism of tyranny and its proxy armies around the Middle East. But let's not kid ourselves. This economic pressure is not going to be enough. The Iranian regime is mocking President Trump. He drew a red line, and they think it is the same as President Obama's red line from 2012 against the Assad regime when he warned them not to use chemical weapons. They think that they can negotiate their way out of accountability for slaughtering innocent people and negotiate a way to save their regime that still chants death to America. And so now President Trump's credibility personally is on the line. America's credibility is on the line, as the world waits to see whether President Trump will, try to draw a line at economic pressure and that's it, or take real firm action that will tilt the balance in the favor of those brave Iranian patriots who are rising up for their freedom against the regime's tyranny.
Mariam, as Ilan just mentioned, it's going to take more than economic sanctions and implementing other embargoes and things of that nature. Because looking ahead, as much as we can with this situation unfolding in Iran, the U.S. just joined several other nations, including Australia, Canada, UK, and India, in issuing security alert Monday, telling citizens to leave Iran immediately. Iran's leadership is approaching a critical juncture. It can either pursue a Venezuelan-style accommodation with President Trump or remain on a trajectory of economic deterioration. How do you see this playing out?
Well, look, I really want to foot something Elon just said, and it's that a red line only matters when it's enforced. When we had President Obama draw a red line and then do absolutely nothing when that red line was crossed, our adversaries saw that we were all bark and no bite. And what President Trump has proved to the world and every international leader over the last year or so is that when we say something, we will do it. And I think in the coming days and hours, it's important that when we draw that red line, we follow through. I think thinking about some of the options being presented to President, we know he does not shy away from kinetic action. And I think that might be a viable choice in addition to some cyber options. The regime is weak. The regime is on its back foot. And these protests only enforce those factors happening on the ground. If there's one thing the president ought to go after, it's certainly the ballistic missiles program of the IRGC. We know that this is the crown jewel of their military industry of the Islamic Republic, and it's what they've been building up to even after Operation Midnight Hammer, even after the 12-day war in which Israel heavily degraded their military capabilities.
Yeah, and we have been hearing from those in the Iranian parliament. They're mocking the U.S. They're saying death to the United States. But it seems as if they don't fully understand President Trump when it does come to the red line in the sand, because he, unlike President Obama, has followed through with every single action, whether it was taking out Maduro in the middle of the night or whether it was Operation Midnight Hammer, as you mentioned, Mariam. So President Trump has followed through it. So it's shocking to think that people are not fully understanding. And I think this is part of the difference between protests we've seen in the past, Elon, and what we're seeing now. I mean, would you think that's a fair assessment? Because we have seen many protests in Iran before, but it's clear here there is so much more behind it. So what would you say that the United States could do more of in backing these demonstrators without triggering an all-out regional war?
The arrogance of the Iranian regime is truly extraordinary. They don't understand that this is a president who means what he says and is not going to let them walk all over him and trample America's honor. I think the president now stands at a critical juncture where he has to decide, is the U.S. going to support a democratic transition in Iran? Now, that doesn't mean throwing America's weight behind regime change. The Iranian people are already the ones trying to change the regime. The question is whether America is going to give them its back, whether it will get more internet into Iran so that the protesters can communicate with each other, whether he will attack critical regime targets that are enabling them to continue oppressing these people who are rising up for their freedom, or is the U.S. going to allow the regime that chants death to America to live another day and just try to contain it and keep it down to size? But if the United States supports the Iranian people in their quest for freedom and democracy, it would be the single best transformation in the Middle East in decades. It would bring peace between countries in the region. It would knock out the world's #1 state sponsor of terror that has sought to destabilize the United States and Europe. The Iranian people are there on the street begging for their freedom, and I'd like to see the free world standing foursquare behind them.
Very well said. Now, Mariam, talk to us about the opposition groups, including the Crown Prince of Iran and others that have emerged at the center of all of this.
Absolutely. And look, this is too early in the game to begin to unravel what comes in the days after the regime falls, and the president is clearly invested in seeing this regime toppled. If there's one thing we know about the Arab Spring, and I'm not going to make one-to-one direct parallels here because it's apples and oranges as it happened in North Africa versus how it will play out in Iran, it is too soon to call the playing field. It is too soon to see a clear view of the horizon of what comes after the regime is toppled. But here's what we do know, that the Iranian people know exactly what they want, and they know they want this Islamic republic tyranny that has endured for 47 years to be removed. And to foot stomp just another thing my colleague Elon just said is that they are on a quest for freedom, and so is the entire Middle East. When the regime falls, it is not just the Iranian people that will be liberated, it is the entire Middle East that will be liberated. This is a regime that has gone after Americans, that has gone after Arabs, Christians, you name it. This regime was invested in the destruction and the chaos of the region, and their fall will mean a brighter, safer Middle East and a brighter and safer world.
I agree with you, Mariam. In terms of the next steps here, it is so important to focus on the here and now and the people of Iran. But we are hearing concerns about the future of what's to come, because past this prologue, we've seen what happened in Iraq. And therefore, when there was a void of power, that's what gave way to ISIS. So in terms of the Crown Prince here, Elon, do you think that he is the right person for the job? Of course, he is advocating for democracy. He was thrown out by his own government, and he is calling for the protesters to rise up.
The Crown Prince of Iran is a very brave and honorable man who wants to bring democracy to Iran, who wants to bring peace to the Middle East, and has spoken very boldly about the need for Iran to stop funding its proxy armies around the region, to embrace peace with Israel, to embrace peace with America, and to lead a democratic transition. We've seen in the last few days, after Iran cut the internet, after the Islamic Republic cut the internet, that the views on his Instagram page, for example, plummeted from, tens of millions of views per video to very small numbers. And that shows you that he has a very large following of people inside Iran. They don't want to bring back a monarchy, bring back the Shah and return to what there was before the revolution. But I certainly see him as a figurehead who could lead a democratic transition as a kind of constitutional monarch and help to build a better Iran. Let's remember, Iran is not the same as Iraq, which was, largely a fake state held together by a dictator. This is a country with thousands of years of history, a very educated population, a very powerful diaspora around the world who want to support its reconstruction. And the sooner that they are able to begin a democratic transition and put behind a regime that forces women to cover their hair, hangs gay people from cranes, the quicker they put that behind them, the quicker that Iran can move forward, the whole Middle East can move forward to a future of peace within itself and with the United States.
Well, hopefully, we're all praying for the same thing, and hopefully Iran, as well as the region, can actually get the type of leadership that it needs going forward. Thank you so much, Mariam and Elon.
Great to be with you.